Mangwana ni mwalelepo vukenjani tekwas vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Berry and Glenora Shapura. How are you, Glenora?
I'm doing very well. As you said, it's a beautiful Thursday.
Yes, it is.
Good things are
I said
happening.
that offset though.
I want everybody to know. You said this before we started. It's a beautiful Thursday and hopefully good things are going to come.
Certainly. But of course, the news is always a mixed bag.
Let's take a look at what you can expect on Africa Good Morning. Strokes rising among teens and young adults in Mozambique. Kenya to turn cold forest into a memorial site. UK orders China to shut secret police stations on British soil. We'll also be crossing over to Zimbabwe, speaking to our correspondent Talen Gore, who'll fill us in on the news making waves there.
Let's get into the top stories on Africa Good Morning. We start off in Mozambique, where strokes are rising among teens and adults. 68 victims of cerebral vascular accident had been admitted to the Central Hospital of Nampula by the end of May. Of this number, most are young people between 18 and 30 years old. The number of patients, especially the young who are admitted to this health unit with a stroke, is quite worrying. We receive an average of 2 patients per week. The most of them are male. HCN neurologist Frederico Sebastião told press last week. Now, he explained that the disease is caused by excessive consumption of alcoholic beverages, smoking, among other things. Sebastião also said that patients with hypertension are more likely to have a stroke, especially in cold weather. Cerebral vascular accidents are usually associated with age, Sebastião said, but recently the disease has tended to affect young people as well.
Swinging over to East Africa, Kenya to turn culled forest into a memorial site. Kenya's Interior Minister says the government will convert the Shakola forest, where more than 250 members of a Christian cult followers died, into a national memorial. Kithure Kindiki said once the recovery of the bodies buried into the 800-acre forest was complete, the place will be turned into a place of remembrance so that people don't forget what happened there. He said the government had enough evidence to prosecute the leader of the cult and the main suspect, Pastor Paul Mackenzie, for genocide after he allegedly convinced his followers to fast to death in order to go to heaven. Most of the victims, including children, died of starvation, but some were strangled, beaten, or suffocated, according to autopsy reports. The minister spoke on Tuesday at the start of the third phase of exhumation, when 9 more bodies were recovered. Now, since the operation started in April, 251 bodies have been recovered, 95 people have been rescued from the forest, and 35 suspects arrested.
Now, more than 30 organizations and political parties have teamed up against the government's Employment Equity Amendment Act in South Africa, and they plan to align their protests and actions against the new race law. Yesterday, members of Solidarity and 30 other organizations, including political parties such as the Democratic Alliance, Freedom Front Plus, and Action SA, signed a resolution to fight the proposed Fair Employment Act. DA John Steenhuisen said the quotas targeted the groups defined by the regulations as colored males and females and Indian males and females. People from these communities suffered discrimination under the previous regime, and now they are being re-victimized by a democratic government that has learned all the wrong lessons from the past, he said. Solidarity Chief Executive Dr. Dirk Herman said the injustice would not be tolerated. Political lecturer at Northwest University, Dr. Benjamin Rapanyane, said the act signaled the ANC's attempt to gain more control over the economy, increase social divisions, and ban certain communities from employment in certain sectors of the economy.
Rwanda genocide suspect Kabuga unfit for trial, says a UN court. A UN court has ruled that aging Rwandan genocide suspect Felicien Kabuga is unfit to stand trial, calling instead for an alternative legal procedure that will not end in a conviction. The Hague-based International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals said in an order late on Tuesday that it finds Mr. Felicien Kabuga is unfit to participate meaningfully in his trial and is very unlikely to regain fitness in the future. The judges said they wanted to adopt an alternative finding procedure that resembles a trial as closely as possible, but without the possibility of a conviction. This would ensure respect for his rights at the same time as achieving the goals of the court, they said. One judge gave a dissenting opinion. Kabuga, 90, went on trial in September last year, with prosecutors accusing him of setting up hate media that urged ethnic Hutus to kill rival Tutsis and supplying death squads with machetes. The businessman refused to appear in court or appear remotely at the start of his trial and has subsequently followed proceedings via video link from a wheelchair at the court's detention center. The court put the trial on hold in March over health concerns.
Now, the UK government has ordered China to shut unofficial police stations operating on British soil, Security Minister Tom Tugendhat told Parliament on Tuesday. The Foreign Office told the Chinese embassy that any functions related to such police service stations in the UK are unacceptable and that they must not operate in any form, a written statement said. The embassy responded that all such stations have closed permanently. It added, British police began investigations after the human rights group Safeguard Defenders reported their existence in the UK, Tugendhat said. According to the group, they were officially set up to provide administrative services, but were also used to monitor and harass diaspora communities, and in some cases to coerce people to return to China outside of legitimate channels, he added. That brings us to the end of our top stories on Africa Good Morning. We swing over to Zimbabwe to have a conversation with Talent Gore shortly.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with entertainment.
Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
Now, Zimbabwe is abuzz with news activity as we cross over to Talent Gore. She's going to talk to us about the plans to introduce plastic IDs. Former ZANU-PF political commissar Xavier Kasukuwere joining the election candidacy run, and ZEC inviting observers for forthcoming polls. Talent, good morning. Take it away.
Good morning, Ashwin, and Africa, good morning. So Zimbabwe is set to replace its mental disc driving.
Okay, unfortunately, we can't maintain a connection with Talent there. We've been having issues connecting with her all morning. But just to re-summarize that, there are plans to introduce plastic driving license, and these are at an advanced stage. You know what's interesting about this? Those plans were alive when I left Zimbabwe in 2013. Wow. Yeah, but they're at an advanced stage, so let's be positive about it. Former ZANU-PF political commissar Xavier Kasukuwere is running for presidency in the 2023 general elections. Something interesting about this, there was a Twitter poll, and it would seem that a lot of Zimbabweans, particularly in the ZANU-PF party, like Kasukuwere possibly more than the president, but we'll see.
Could he be the next president?
That's a tough one to call, Glenora. And the ZEC is inviting observers for forthcoming polls. Of course, Zimbabwean elections have always been questioned all the way from 2008, but right now the Electoral Commission is saying they are ready to have outside observers. What we're going to do now on Africa Good Morning is we're going to swing over to a report from WHO's Science in 5. Of course, COVID-19 is generally over, which is just, it's not a headline, so to speak, but the effects are still being felt, and particularly amongst children right now, it seems to be a rise in respiratory diseases. Is there a connection? Is there not? Here's Science in 5.
We are seeing a spike in respiratory diseases among children in many parts of the world. What are the symptoms? What are the red flags? And how can parents protect their children? Hello and welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith. We are talking to Dr. Wilson Were today. Welcome, Wilson. Wilson, speak to us about this spike that we are seeing in respiratory diseases in children.
We are seeing a spike in respiratory diseases in children, particularly those under 10 years of age, beyond the typical flu season we usually experience during fall and winter months. This unusual spike in cases has been reported in several countries in Europe, including France, Netherlands, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, and also in the United States. They are seeing an increasing number of children hospitalized with acute respiratory infections caused by common respiratory viruses such as influenza, parainfluenza, respiratory syncytial virus commonly called RSV, adenoviruses, and coronaviruses including COVID-19. In addition, we are also seeing increasing cases of pharyngitis and skin infection caused by a bacteria called group A streptococcal infection. This may be because we are back to relative normalcy after COVID-19 and seeing viruses and bacteria spread again. Maybe some children did not have prior infections, so don't have any built-in immunity. Or maybe some of these viruses changed just a little bit and seem to be spreading faster. Maybe some children are getting multiple infections, so becoming more sicker than usual. So it could be any of these reasons as we try to figure out which particular one.
Wilson, what are the symptoms, what are the red flags that the parents should be looking out for?
Typically, children will have cold or flu-like symptoms with a runny nose or nasal congestion, sneezing with scratched throat, irritating throat, a cough. Some might have a fever or change in their ability to eat or drink. In most cases, parents and caregivers can manage these symptoms. However, in some cases, it may be associated with group A streptococcal infection. In this case, children will have a sore throat, a headache, muscle pains, and a fever, along with a fine reddish rash, which is called scarlet fever. But watch out for the red flags. Worsening of these symptoms, specifically if a child is breathing too fast or having trouble breathing with the upper tummy getting sucked in, which we call chest indrawing, or when the lips or skin are turning blue, or when the child is constantly running a high temperature or throwing up, or is unable to breastfeed, drink, or eat. And in case of group A streptococcal infection, they have painful skin and bones. Then you know it's time to immediately consult a health provider or go to hospital.
Wilson, what can parents do to protect their children from these diseases?
There are 3 things parents can do to protect their children. First is practice good hygiene. Cover your mouth and nose with a mask or tissue. Cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze.
Now it's time to take a look at the weather predictions for Southern Africa. On the 10th of June, Namibia joins the world in creating awareness on disability. Aina Kweyo talks to Dagbreak spokesperson Dunge Iyambo in this 2-part interview. Let's take a look.
With Miss Ndunge Yambo. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Now let's get into today's business. I understand that the Disability Day is on the 10th of June. Why is it important for us to raise awareness on disabilities?
You know, I absolutely love that question because it's a question that, even though it sounds so obvious, it's one that's very integral.
Yeah.
Raising awareness on disability of any sort, Dagbreek deals primarily with intellectual and learning disabilities and disorders, but generally raising awareness is so key in this that you impart a knowledge, an experience of what is unknown to the average person. You allow, again, like I said, a knowledge to knowing that there are people living differently, not by choice really, but differently from what you and I would live on a daily. They are limited because of what they are able to do, what they are not able to do, and they have to find alternative ways of making life work for them that make sense in the same way that you and I would go about our daily business.
Yeah.
So raising awareness, really also giving that knowledge, allows for an opportunity for those living with disabilities to have access, right? To have a voice, to be acknowledged where they would otherwise be undermined or ignored, and just not have open doors as well. So we need to have the understanding so that we're able to successfully integrate them into our working societies. Yes.
Love that. All right, tell us about what Dagbreek is doing currently, you know, to raise awareness. Are there any projects that you guys are currently running in communities, maybe to raise awareness on disabilities with, you know, the parents perhaps, the children's friends perhaps? What is Dagbreek doing?
Well, in terms of raising awareness, we raise awareness about the school, that there is such a school available.
Okay.
But in terms of raising awareness for disabilities, our children are already the community of children living with learning disabilities and disorders. So what we do is our awareness is primarily focused on support.
Okay.
Because our school cannot run like the average mainstream school. We have special needs, and that those special needs need to be catered for in a manner that though state really tries, is not able to cater entirely, right? I'll use, for instance, the example of wheelchairs. It's a very basic example.
Yeah.
But
So yes, of course, on the 10th of June, we'll be joining the world in commemorating World Disability Day. Next up, let's get into the economic indicators. Just before we get into the sports, interesting news from the sporting world. Lionel Messi is moving to Inter, not the one that matters, Inter Miami. See you soon.
Good day, everyone. Time for international sports news, and starting off with golf first. And it is Jay Monahan, the director or the commissioner of the Professional Golf Association of America, that is in the news. He made a big announcement for world golf, men's golf specifically. He announced that there will be a merger between 3 tours. It will be a merger between the PGA of America, also the DP World Tour of Europe, and also the Live Golf Initiative, the Breakaway Golf League, that was coordinated by Greg Norman. That's a surprise announcement, as there was lots of frustration between the 3 tours lately, and it was only in the 4 majors that everybody played in those tournaments, specifically the Live Golf players that was sanctioned and did not play anymore on the PGA and the European Tour, and was also not considered to play later in the Ryder Cup team competition between Europe and America. It was Jay Monahan of the PGA that negotiated with the director of Live Golf, that is Yassin Al-Ramajan, and apparently the two of them reached an agreement. It was the news that came from that announcement was that Greg Norman, the CEO of Live Golf, was not involved in those negotiations. Latest development on the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour is that players will be meeting with the commissioners of the 2 tours, and they will discuss the details of the merger. Moving on to tennis news, it is the French Open that continues in Paris at Roland Garros, and it is getting closer to the semi-finals of the tournament, and the finals will be played this coming weekend on Saturday and Sunday. In the men's division, there's a big semi-final coming up, and that is Carlos Alcaraz, the number 1 seed, that will play against Novak Djokovic. What happened was the number 1 seed, Carlos Alcaraz, he beat Stefanos Tsitsipas quite convincingly in 3 sets to advance to the semi-final, his first semi-final at the French Open. And he's going to play the 22-time Grand Slam winner, that is Novak Djokovic, and he'll play him in the semi-final. It is Djokovic that won against Karen Khachanov of Russia, and that was in 4 sets. Difficult game for Alcaraz that he needs to play against Novak Djokovic. Djokovic is a 22-time major winner. He won also 2 French Open titles in his career. That was in 2016 and also in 2021. In the women's side of the draw, it is number 2 seed Aryna Sabalenka that's through to the semi-final. It was a tense quarter-final for her. She played against Elena Svitolina of the Ukraine, and it was tense and tension-filled because of the Russian-Ukraine war. It is the Ukrainian that lost 6-4, 6-4. It is Aryna Sabalenka is from Belarus, but there is frustration in the game because Belarus do support Russia in the war against Ukraine. It is Aryna Sabalenka that will now play against Karolina Mushkova. She is from Chechnya. That will be in the semi-finals. Continuing international sports news with cricket news, and it is a news from the England camp that it is Moeen Ali that has come back from retirement to be part of the Ashes cricket team that will play for England against Australia. That series will start on the 17th of June at Edgbaston. There will be 5 tests in the Ashes between England and Australia. He came back from retirement because there's an injury to the first choice spinner.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. Let's get into the highlights from this morning's broadcast. Mozambique, strokes rising among young teens and adults. Kenya to turn cult forest into a memorial site. Outrage at new race act in South Africa.
And with that, we've come to the end of the broadcast. Remember, you can catch Africa Good Morning tomorrow, same time, same place. I am Glenora Shipura.
And I am Ashwin Berry, Swedaj Lakanaka.